Welcome everyone to the Portland Film Festival, presented for the fourth consecutive year by Comcast. We want to thank the Comcast team's tremendous support and commitment to independent filmmakers. Their ongoing support ensures that diverse voices are given a platform to share their unique perspectives on the world. We also want to thank Kerner Camera, Portland Mortgage, and Oregon Film for their support. If you would like more information or you would like to purchase tickets for any of our films, please head over to pdxff.com. I'm Candace McDowell with the Portland Film Festival, and today we are here to discuss the film Manzanar, Diverted, When Water Becomes Dust. We have our director, Kaneko, and producer, Jin Yoo-Kim, with us. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi, thank you.
So this film takes place in a particular valley in California, and it has multiple stories to tell. Would you share with us what inspired you to turn these stories into a film?
So this film looks at Payahuunadü, also known as the Owens Valley. And for those of you who aren't aware of this fact, it is very important to Los Angeles because it is our watershed. The LA Aqueduct connects us, and certainly William Mulholland, was it what, we think of him in terms of Chinatown as well. But that's an important historical point. I think what for me personally, I was asked to sort of do some work, research on this humanities project around Manzanar. And when I began, I was thinking, well, how can I approach Manzanar and the Japanese American incarceration story differently? And I think I vaguely knew that it was on LA Department of Water and Power land, but I had kind of forgotten. And so it was really kind of a revelation to think about how all of these stories intersected in this particular place, which I have a personal connection to, since my family was all incarcerated during World War II, not at Manzanar, but Japanese Americans from the West Coast were all sent away or put into these concentration camps. So I think it was because of this larger story about the West really converging in this place, the Native American story and their forced removal, Japanese American forced removal to this place, and of course the water story of how farmers and ranchers had been bought out by DWP, and this story continues.
Mm-hmm. So the story for you really started with Manzanar, and how did you make that connection with the tribes there, with the indigenous community?
So when I was asking around for contacts, the superintendent at Manzanar said, "Oh, why don't you reach out to Kathy Bancroft?" And miraculously, I think it was a kind of a difficult time for her in that moment that I happened to just be up in the valley because I think her son had just passed away. But she very graciously agreed to do an interview, and we immediately hit it off. I think she was, I think she does a lot of interviews with a lot of different people, and I think it was nice to actually speak to somebody who had some prior knowledge and was a bit more informed about different issues. So we immediately hit it off. And I think at the time that I started this project, it was going to be a short film. It was, I didn't know what it was, certainly wasn't the film that it has become. I just kept going back and asking her more questions, and then she would introduce other people, and she just became a huge gateway and bridge to so many people there. So, I mean, I feel very close now to, these communities, but I feel like it really starts with Kathy.
So would you say it was collaborative with her, any part of the film? Did you bring them in, or did you have the script, quote unquote?
Oh, I mean, I think it was my idea. And she was always very supportive. She's like, oh, that sounds like a great idea. And, you know, throughout the process, she would always look at cuts. I know it's such a tedious process when the film is not completed. And she's not a filmmaker, but she was, very helpful in that way and was always supportive. And when we involved other folks, right? So we also have Tracy Rector, who's based up in Seattle. She's the executive producer. She's an Indigenous filmmaker, not from the Valley, but I think can speak to larger Indigenous issues. So she was very supportive, and she actually was my introduction, although I realize now it's such a small community, I would have met them eventually anyway, but to Mariah, David, and Jesse Archer, who did most of the aerial photography as well. And I think that really, their collaboration was really key. I feel like since they are from, that area, they're Indigenous, that footage feels different than I think the way a lot of other people might have photographed the land.
Okay. I was going to mention it. The photography, the cinematography was very vivid and beautiful. Was that a goal of yours to show the audience most of the film, the land?
Oh, of course. I mean, I think that through the process of making the film that, it became really clear that the star, the real main character was the land. And so what better way to feature the land than through both aerial photography and close-ups, right? So I think it just became this process of really trying to figure out how to feature the land in a very vivid way. And I think that it has become, or it sort of became our sort of modus operandi, just kind of like really seduce audiences with the kind of vibrancy and beauty of this place, and then kind of pull the rug out from under them when they realized like what was going on there. So
how do you and Jin Yoo-Kim work together?
Jin, I've been talking a lot, you say something.
I met Anne in 2007 when she was a mentor for a program that I was in called Armed with a Camera Fellowship. And like since then, she's just been like really in my life. Like she was at my wedding. She was like 9 months pregnant, ready to pop at my wedding. So her daughter's the same age as my marriage. And then in 2017, she asked me to join this project. And at first I really didn't know why I would be the right partner for her, because I'm Korean, I'm not Japanese American. I don't necessarily consider myself an environmentalist, but I live in Los Angeles. And when I read the treatment, it made me furious, both at what was happening and also at my lack of knowledge of what was happening, and how so much of the history that I know was through school or just like random collection of reading articles, but it never dawned on me that the same place that we got our water from was also the place that incarcerated Japanese Americans, that forcibly removed Native Americans from the land. That there was so much history there that I didn't know that I should have known because I live here. And then I realized like no one knows this. And there's a reason why this history has been kept from us, and that we only know piecemeal information or what is presented to us as, the truth, right? And again, like as filmmakers, like we're always looking for ways to tell the untold stories and try to fill in that gap, that learning gap as well. And I just saw like the potential and the impact of this film. And working with Anne, of course, has always been like, at first it was like, oh, she's my mentor, she's like my boss, but she's like the only person that I felt like I had like a true partnership with. And I think we both understand each other on that level. We're also like both mothers. We're both, I think, in it for the right reasons. So there's like no one I trust more working collaboratively than with Anne. And in terms of like our process, I consider myself a creative producer, so I am also like involved in the story and the shaping of it as well. But Anne's like, you know, kind of like the cinematographer. She's also the co-editor. She's the director, producer. She's done like, you know, so much of the work. So it was easy for me to like plug into kind of what was already happening and the momentum of the project, and then do a lot of the budgeting, a lot of the administrative stuff, but also like think about the impact campaign and really think ahead to like what the message of the film could be and how people are going to plug into it.
Mhm.
I think with any partnership, it's always about how you can complement each other. And so, you know, I think that we work really well together because we have, you know, we share the same values ultimately, but our personalities are different. And, you know, I think, you know, Jin is a director in her own right. So she is always, you know, it's great. She gives great notes, and I think always has the eye on the bigger picture, which is always hard to maintain when you're in the weeds, right? So
Mhm.
I've really trusted her input that way. But you know, she's been so supportive, and you know, really making this film happen and happen in a bigger way than I could ever have imagined by myself. So.
Mhm. And since this film is very specific to the Los Angeles area, are you able to do showings there? I know with COVID, it limits a lot. A lot of film festivals are purely online, like ours, not in person. But are you able to do any showings in the LA area?
Well, it's funny you should ask.
Do a
We just
plug.
had our LA premiere at the LA Asian Pacific Film Festival, which was in person, which was fabulous. I think people are still hesitant to come out in person when it's indoors. So on November 4th, we are launching a series of community screenings, which are mostly outdoors. The first one is at the LA Historic Park. And so it's a collaboration with the Our Water LA Coalition. And so it sort of kicks off a series of community screenings that we're trying to make happen here. So we have one in East LA and Boyle Heights, and then another in Panorama City. We're collaborating with Pacoima Beautiful. So that's in the San Fernando Valley. And then in the new year, we'll have other screenings in Commerce and Compton and just all around. We're hoping in the Inland Empire, and really just making Southern Californians in general aware of the fact that we need to get off of imported water, and that, you know, we're in the midst of a very severe drought right now. So I think that all of those issues are key. But, you know, even though this film is very sort of specific around these issues in Southern California and then in Payahuunadü, I think that it resonates across the West, right? It really, these stories and this history really resonates across the West and even beyond, because water is such a crucial, you know, resource that we really need to be thinking about right now.
Mhm. And you mentioned a little bit ago that the filmmakers, it was kind of a small community that you connected with. You said you would have met them anyways. Can you tell us a little bit about that? The filmmaking community connected with?
Well, I think so for me, as somebody who comes from a big city, it's like, it's always interesting working in a community that's a rural community, right? It's like everyone knows everybody. And that's really sort of the situation there. I mean, I will say, I mean, I went to college in a small town in Vermont, and I also lived in a small town in Japan. So I kind of have had that experience, but it kind of allows you to have more access. And so it's been an interesting process, because I feel like in some ways this film has, you know, has a lot of power in that place because it is a small community. So it's, again, trying to bring that power back to a big city like Los Angeles. Los Angeles could be a state in and of itself, right? It's such a big city. that,
Yes.
you know, to really try to make some change happen. So it's kind of working between those two different, I don't know, it's sort of this dichotomy of places of power, but that's ultimately part of the story, right? That those who, you know, in less populated areas, that they also have, that their stories are recognized in places where that are more populous. And certainly we're impacting, you know, we need to be thinking about these things together. We can't just be these separations between these faraway places. So
And I want to add that it was our goal when we finished this film that we would do a community screening series in Payahuunadü. So we did like a 4-stop community screening series there, and it was amazing just to like be able to share that space with the people there, who are in our film and the people who are most affected. But a lot of them like came out to more than one screening also, because it is a small tight-knit community and they just want to be there too. But it was also really interesting and fulfilling to see that they also got something out of it. It wasn't like, oh, they already knew all the story and it's just like a regurgitation of everything they knew. Like they found out more information about like the Japanese American perspective, about like Los Angeles's tie-in with them even. So and even their own communities stories, like they don't always know everything about it. So I think there's all these different forces of like why stories have been hidden. Sometimes it's like for the protection, like you don't want to like re-traumatize your community, or you don't want to have them feel like, you know, some sort of obstacle, right, for knowing too much or whatever. So I think in many ways, it was really fulfilling to see that even people who are the most affected still gained knowledge and gained empathy and wanted to like, you know, build coalition with others. And it is that kind of I guess like what we want as our mission for our film is to make sure that when people come away after seeing it, they understand a little bit more about other communities and that they want to like build that bridge.
I think that it's also just really empowering to sort of experience acknowledgement of your own history and your own story, right? And so I think that that's also part of it for those communities. And so we hope that that's true for others too, in other places.
When I watched the film, it seemed very significant to me when two of the women were discussing the importance of documentation and not just living off of memory, because if you don't document it, then history gets rewritten by whoever's writing it. That was impactful to me. And I think it will be to a lot of people, because that happens everywhere. And I think Americans have the tendency, when things are going awry, to point to World War II and the Nazis and Germany over there. And it's easy not to look at what we were doing here, right? On the West Coast. What were we doing here in America while that was going on over there?
Yeah, and like if you dig deeper, what we did to Native Americans across the country. So yeah.
Yeah, and those stories are being told now, as you mentioned, as Jin Yoo-Kim mentioned, finding those stories that aren't being told and bringing them to the spotlight. That's kind of the heart of independent filmmakers. And on that note, do you have any advice for filmmakers who have a story that they want to tell, but maybe haven't gotten started yet? Something that's personal to them about their family, their history here in America or abroad, and they haven't started yet for whatever reason.
Jin, do you want to say something?
I mean, I have a lot to say about this subject. I'm like, I feel like I could write a whole like dissertation about it. I mean, there's obviously like reasons why it takes such a long time to make. I mean, it took us like what, 5 or 6 years to make this. I think it's really easy to fall into the trap of like, I can't make this film because I don't have enough money. I don't know who, you know, what access I have, like who's going to be my collaborators, how do I fundraise? Like these are all real things, like, and we go through it all the time as filmmakers. And so like every time we start a new project, it's like starting a new small business, right? Like you have to like set up the system, like do we do an LLC, do we like get grants? And I will say, like, I'll just like say one thing about grants, because I feel like a lot of documentary filmmakers go into it applying for grants, getting the grants, and then that'll give them seed money to like start doing the work. After you get over your personal like reasons of like, you know, all the doubts, and then you're ready to make the film and you're doing the grants, if you get a rejection, don't stop, because especially for women of color specifically, like we have the highest drop-off rate after the first rejection. So that's something I learned by like being on the other side as well. They see a lot more repeat submissions, specifically from white men, but it starts dropping off. And, you know, there's a whole psychology of reasons of like why women of color specifically don't reapply again. A lot of it is kind of getting over their imposter syndrome, like getting over their doubts. But they're really, you know, like you just have to, like the golden rule is like 3 times. So if you don't get the grant the first time, try 2 more times. We've reapplied to several grants. Some of them we did get the second or third time, some of them we still haven't gotten. That doesn't like really matter at the end, because we were able to get enough to make the film. Thankfully, our film was almost, I think 100%, not 100, maybe like 90 something percent funded by grants. So we're lucky in that sense. I know most documentary filmmakers have like equity investors, like, you know, personal funds, but we were lucky in the sense of like, we don't have to pay anyone back, you know, at this point in our filmmaking. That's one like tangible advice I would give to new filmmakers. I would also add that like, there are many people out there who are already making films that may or may not be the right people to be making the films. So why not you, right? Like if you want to spin it the other way, it's like you're doubting yourself and wondering if you should tell this story, but there are plenty of people out there who are not doubting themselves, who are just adding to the noise. So you could be the one that breaks through the noise, and you could be the one that has a unique perspective on something that that people need to hear. And yeah, and I think there is also like on the flip side, there's a lot of responsibility that filmmakers hold because we have this very powerful tool as a storytelling device that people can learn from, but also can manipulate and use for their nefarious reasons. So anyways, it's a loaded answer. But
I'll just say, you know, you do what you can, right? And I think that filmmaking, it's like, yeah, sure, record things. And it may not, you know, you may not make something with it, but maybe somebody else can, or some, you know, and so it is great to just record things. I feel like if you have that impulse, do it, because things change and people pass away, like certainly we found during COVID. And you know, stories need to be remembered, right? Remembered, documented, and remembered. But you know, I feel like you start with what you can do, and you know, that it can be super overwhelming, like Jin has mentioned. But you know, I don't want to burden anyone with that. It's just what you can, and I think that we can even just, you can just record with your phone even, right? I mean, everyone has that tool, which was not the case before. So I think a lot of amazing things have been made on phones. So
yeah, and I think just to add to what you were saying, Candace, about like documenting so that history isn't rewritten, it's, you know, we also want to document so that history can't be repeated, because like we have, you know, we wanted this documentary to serve as a resource. So when people are looking for information, we can be the source, not just like, you know, art, which is great. Like it is very artistic and poetic, but we wanted to also be the resource for when people are searching for answers. We wanted to be part of the chapter in history books, right? Not just like an addendum or whatever. So I think that it's really important for filmmakers to acknowledge that we do have this power to, especially for community filmmaking, like we're adding to the knowledge base. We are becoming the resource. We're doing this and we're using this as our powerful way to stop history from repeating to other communities, right? Because like it can happen to you, maybe it won't happen to your community again, but it could happen to another community if they don't know about it.
And this water issue isn't solved, right? it's still not solved. So it's still an issue that needs to be on the forefront. Do you have a website that we could mention now for the audience that shows these screenings coming to LA so that they can come out to them, or any other events?
Yes, it's www.manzanardiverted.com. It's very easy to find us. And yeah, we try to keep it updated as much as possible. So please, log in and find out about screenings. We're creating curriculum material, and we're hoping to do other screenings, at academic institutions as well. I will mention that in Portland, I have family in Portland, and so there will be a screening sponsored by the JACL, the Japanese American Citizens League in Portland, probably in the spring. We were hoping to do it in the fall, but because of COVID, we decided we were going to do it in person. So I think that should be exciting. We hopefully will be able to have an in-person screening. And, always with these screenings, we try to have some sort of panel so that people can discuss the issues. I think locally, the film resonates. And so I think it's important to remember how people can take action in their own community. So.
Mm-hmm. And the beauty of the virtual film festival scene is that, you don't have to be in Portland to watch this film, right? And we have a bunch of other film festivals coming up that are either virtual or in person or hybrid. So anyone can just find that information on our website. We are also very active on social media, Manzanar Diverted on social media, and we post our upcoming screenings. So we're in the middle of our film festival circuit.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us about, you mentioned curriculum that you're putting together. Does that have to do with specifically the water, or is this about Manzanar? Is this about Japanese concentration camps?
I think the film covers a lot of issues. So we're our first foray into this, I think, is about just creating a discussion guide. And I think that there are this aspect of memory and remembering places, talking about forced removal within these sort of shared histories. So there's that part of it. And then I think also kind of the environmental side and thinking about water. Water is such a huge issue in and of itself. And certainly I don't pretend to have any answers for that, but I think it's hoping to connect people to maybe people who do have more answers. So
yeah. Was there any particular memorable moments on set or challenges where you were able to rally and overcome?
Let's see, on set.
Maybe you should talk about the music.
Oh, yeah. Well, so this is not on set. But because the film, we posted the film during COVID, right? So our entire composing team is pretty much Pacific Northwest based. They're all mostly up in Seattle. So probably some of you may know Laurie Goldston. I think she plays in Portland quite often, but I had approached her about doing the music for the film, right? And my dream was really to just go up to Seattle and hang out with my friends while they played music. It just seemed like it would be so much fun, but given COVID, that wasn't happening, right? So we had to find another approach. And so Laurie is an improv, she's very diverse in terms of kind of musically what she can play, but she does a lot of improvisational work. And so she really, helped to assemble this amazing dream team of composers. And Steve Fisk, as well as Alex Miranda, he's based up in Vancouver, but he is also indigenous from sort of the San Diego area. And then additionally, so the three of them are the composers, and then Matt Chamberlain, percussionist, and Susie Kozawa. She's also Seattle-based. She's a sound artist. And who else? Oh, George Abe, and who plays Shakuhachi, and Sage Romero, who contributed the songs. But the film was completely done improvisationally. No music was written for this film. And so it was an interesting experience, interesting and fun experience. So I think that they basically took the temp track, and Matt laid down a percussive score that was based on the rhythm from the temp track. And then they all improv'd over it. And so Laurie plays cello and some guitar in the film. And then Alex plays imbira, a very interesting instrument, right? But has a very magical sound to it, and also guitar. And we wove it together that way. So that, I think, is was a challenge to try to figure out a way to do the music that would kind of weave the film together, and also to do it remotely.
Wow, I can imagine.
So we're hoping to do an in-person version of the making of the score sometime, somewhere. We would love to do it at Manzanar, and we've applied to some funding, but we're not sure still if the pilgrimage will happen next year. So
maybe make a short film just about the composition.
Oh my gosh, we could certainly. We want to do a AR piece, an augmented reality piece, using some of the sound scores. So anyway.
Oh, great.
Like a sound bath.
Yeah.
Visual sound bath.
Wow. That would be.
We have dreams. We have dreams.
We have all kinds of ideas.
Using money.
It's just about our own bandwidth to like execute them, and money. So yeah.
Okay. Well, if you're listening in on this and watching, and you want to support their future products, please go over to their website. It's manzanardiverted, was it .com?
Yes.
Head over there. You can sponsor them and support future projects if you're interested in seeing more coming from these two, which I know that I am. I'll try to make it to that Portland screening that you have in the film. Yeah,
we'll definitely let you know so you can put the word out. I think it's special. I mean, I will say it's kind of, it's been challenging doing, having our premiere in this virtual environment, but in some ways I think, well, we can have an in-person premiere, and then it kind of makes it fresh again, because it's certainly a different experience to see the film on the big screen with people. It's really exciting because the film is so beautiful. So.
Yes. Well, if you're watching right now, you can head over to pdxff.com and vote for the audience award for this film. If you've already seen it, you can go watch it again and listen for the sound score, and particularly notice the imaging. And after this conversation today, see if there's more that you can glean for this film. I'm going to watch it again. Thank you so much for meeting with us today, taking time out of your schedule, your busy teaching schedule, and letting the filmmakers and the audience members hear a little bit behind the scenes.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
We'll be up in Portland at some point, not sure exactly when, but sometime. So looking forward.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Any last words you have?
No, thank you. Enjoy the film.
Go vote and go watch Manzanar Diverted, When Water Becomes Dust. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.